Can you give us some TikTok on what's been going on in the back lawn, Jeff?
Well, Chris, we know that this meeting lasted about 40 minutes. Of course, the press and the cameras were only in there for about 30 seconds of that 40 minutes. So at this point, we don't know exactly what the conversation was. Not surprisingly, a White House aide just emailed me. He said it went very well. Of course it did. But at 7:30, here in another 30 minutes, we'll hear from Sergeant Crowley himself holding a news conference just a couple blocks away at the AFL-CIO. But the body language initially was said to look sort of stiff between the two. But a few other aides said as they were sort of watching it out of the windows of their West Wing offices, that they were listening intently to each other, that there were some smiles and some jokes. But having Vice President Biden out there, I think, was optically one of the most interesting things, sort of, as you said, a late addition to this. Because the president was bringing sort of the guy who he used throughout the whole campaign to bring along white voters, if you will. So it was the four of them. So I think the White House wants the picture to be left at that. But as the night goes along here, we'll find out more.
So he's using the vice president, again, not as his foreign envoy, but as his Ed McMahon.
Something like that. I mean, and that's one of the reasons perhaps that the cameras and the microphones were some 50 feet away. We weren't going to hear any of the conversation, certainly from the vice president. I would have loved to have a microphone on him to see what he had to say.
Well, okay, you hang in there, Jeff, and join our roundtable as we discuss this now with Gene and Mark. It seems to be, Mark, your thoughts. Do you have any TikTok yet to share, any reportage?
Well, first of all, it's interesting that Biden had a non-alcoholic beer. The other guys all had a Buckler. Yeah, so maybe they didn't want him to drink
and Dutch, and talk. Isn't that the non-alcoholic version of Heineken?
Right. And Skip Gates actually made a shrewd move. We thought he was going to ask for Red Stripe, which is a Jamaican beer. He likes to vacation in Jamaica. Instead, he asked for a Sam Adams Light, and there had been a lot of talk that they should have an American beer like Sam Adams from Boston. But again, we don't know exactly what was said, but I also was watching the body language. It was interesting. We know Joe Biden for being a very loquacious guy. In fact, most of the talking was being done.
He apparently doesn't drink, Mark.
By Crowley and by Professor Gates. Crowley started, but then Gates was being very animated, talking a lot in professor mode. Those of us who know him can just imagine what that was like.
Well, don't you think from the visual, Gene, that the sergeant has his game face on?
Well, he certainly seemed to start that way. Now, it'd be interesting to see what he's like at his press conference.
I don't see the crease of a smile.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at Professor Gates. He does, he also doesn't, he kind of has his classroom game face on as well. It is interesting having Biden there, of course, balances the picture in a different way. I mean, you've got two white guys and two black guys, as opposed to two black guys and one white guy. That's what I thought immediately.
Aren't we getting really good at this?
So that kind of, and also, I mean, if the conversation were to fly.
By the way, we have two white guys and two black guys right now, Jeff and I, against you guys. This is interesting, but I think Biden, we're learning so much about this, doesn't drink, I'm told. So it proves the old argument our mothers taught us. See, you don't have to drink to have a good time. Because Joe seems to be having more fun than anybody there.
He's disinhibited enough, I guess.
Yeah, like Jerry Lewis is inhibited.